Hi everyone, welcome to Animator's Breakfast. This is a podcast where we talk about inspiration with different people who work in the animation industry. And today I'm really, actually genuinely excited. I know I say this a lot, but I'm so excited to talk to Cliona Noonan. For anyone who doesn't know her work, I can't recommend it enough. Cliona, anyway, sorry. Yeah, I was about to ramble about you. But
Hello.
Yes, it's lovely to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for asking me. Lovely to hear. Lovely to hear that.
Yeah. Well, I've got to say, when I saw, it was Wet and Soppy that I saw first of your works. And I just thought it was such a refreshing difference to the kind of stuff I was used to seeing. I was going to say the tripe, but that's so unfair. Yeah. The kind of it's very different. Like, it's very graphic orientated, very illustration orientated, more than just animation, I felt anyways. But it was so well staged and my eyes couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, well, definitely illustration is a big influence. But I think I find myself, sometimes when all you're looking at is animation, you are like nothing more inspiring than animation when you're trying to make animation. But it is usually in the non-animation places of like painting or comics or just illustration, where I don't know, it's like you can take a bit from it and apply it to animation, and it feels fresh, even though you're just like taking what someone else did, or you're taking lots of things from lots of different people in different mediums and then merging them.
Stealing them.
Yeah.
Stealing them. Yeah. But your I think it was your graduate short, Tuna, or Tuna, as they say in further west. And I can definitely see, like, I know you've spoken about it before, but I can definitely see the influence of someone like Jonathan Hodgson when it comes across, especially when you're tracking up that kind of guy character's neck and all the hairs and everything.
That's literally the shot. I think it's really nice when I'm watching animation and I can kind of see, like, it's not obvious throughout the whole thing, but you can see in places what their influences are.
Yeah, totally.
Or sometimes, like, you might see it, but they might be like, oh, I've never seen that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of something I was going to mention later as well with the film we're going to be talking about. But, like, it's kind of, like, encouraging as well to yourself when you see something you really like, and an influence that they had is an influence that you really like, because obviously animation is a niche in itself, but within animation there's so many niches, I feel. So I feel like it's nice to be able to look at the other animators you admire and you just feel like inspired by similar things.
Does it give you energy when you're in the middle of production hell, when everything's kind of coming down, you're hitting deadlines and you see something like that? Does it kind of give you the energy to keep going, or do you just want to work on something else then?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. I mean, sometimes you might see something and you're like, that's amazing. Like, I'll just, like, why don't I just do that? Yeah. But you've already made the decisions. It's like, it's too late at that stage. Like, I'm kind of at that stage now, where I'm finishing a film that I started like a year ago.
Oh no!
And
I'm so excited. I can't wait to see it.
But some days you're like, oh, I want to like do a different color, or I want to do a different topic, but you're just following the instructions you laid for yourself at the beginning, with your reasons of like why all these design choices suited the topic of the film. And you just have to remember that, like, no one else has seen any of it. Like, I've been looking at it every day, but I made those decisions for a reason, so it's just like seeing them through.
Yeah, I really like the way you describe it, like a set of instructions. I think that's such an interesting way of looking at it, because effectively it is. It's like a Lego set.
Yeah.
Where you have to build the instructions rather than going crazy.
Yeah.
That's such a nice way of looking at it. But you set the instructions.
Yeah, you're playing a game, but you make the rules.
Yes.
But also you can change the rules at any moment because it's your game.
Yeah. Unless you're deep in production.
Yeah. Even then, yeah, some days you're like, I could just, to a degree, change. So it's never ending. It's nice though having that room. You kind of have like a structure, but you have that room for freedom if you want.
I wanted to ask you about, before we drift onto your topic of choice, because I want to milk you for information first, if I can. Thinking about something like, something that really stood out to me when I watched your shorts and your music video as well, is your choice of color. And I know you just mentioned it there. Like, do you sit down and develop a color script first as part of the storyboarding, or do you how important is the color choices to you? Because they're very vivid, like they're, pastel vivid, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, I usually would have an idea. And if I don't have an idea, I find myself naturally coming back to pastels. Which, it's something like recently I was like, I'm going to do the opposite of what I've done before. But through like developing it, I just come full circle and I'm like, no, that's what appeals to me most. So that feels like the right decision. Yeah. But I think usually it is from the beginning. I have like a very clear idea of the colors. Like with Tuna, it was obviously pink and blue. I think I just decided that at the beginning. I don't know why. I guess the contrast and like blue for Tuna and all that. But also like, again, the influences for that film when I was, I think it was, like just the beginning of developing it, we were kind of showing stuff to lecturers, and one of my lecturers said like, it wasn't even an image from that film, it was from something else. But he said that it really reminded him of this painter's work, Philip Guston, because it was from another short I made before that with Nisha Dempsey. That was just like a little 30-second film, and it was just a hand holding a cigarette. And Philip Guston does these amazing paintings of... Oh,
your short, Destiny, wasn't it?
Yeah. So he does these amazing paintings, a lot of like hands holding cigarettes. Once I found him, I looked up his stuff, and it's mad because I think everything he made in the last 10 years of his life looks completely different to everything he made at the beginning, where it's just really caricatured and it feels quite comic. Yeah. And everything was pink. Everything was like that. Wow. The pink I've used in Tuna. And when I saw, I knew I wanted it to be pink. And when I saw those paintings, it like confirmed it for me. Yeah. And then it was funny because with Wet and Soppy, then I made that with a bigger team. So I don't think I had an idea of the colors. I was kind of, I had kind of references, but really it was like Myrna and Kira, who were on the backgrounds, were figuring out the palette. And that was just really funny because with that, we went in a circle again and we landed back with like the pinks and blues and purples. And then I think it was like Myrna said to me one day, she was like, your film is just like the color palette of the clothes that you wear. And I actually, like, I have clothes that are that turquoise. I was like, this is so true. Like, I almost didn't realize it until then, that I just kept going back to that. And then, I don't know, the new film is green.
Kind of a turquoisey green or a forest green?
All greens. It goes from bluey green to more greeny green. But again, I definitely decided from the beginning, I was like, this is going to be green. Only green. Yeah. And I just stuck to that. So, I think it helps making some decisions at the beginning to kind of limit yourself. Because there's so much like you can do anything.
Yeah.
I guess with color, yeah, I like to make very like specific limiting decisions.
How do you find working then, let's say, if you've picked such very specific, vivid colors for the world, how do you contrast the characters against that then, if you've chosen a specific color palette? Especially if something like that is only green.
Yeah.
That must be a difficult balance.
Yeah. I am finding it actually difficult, yeah, because I guess it's very, everything's very desaturated, and I mean, it helps. I don't know, just with color, it's hard. You're kind of just playing around with it until it feels right. It helps, like if I have the line will contrast. Yes, I think what is nice about like having just one color is throughout the minutes of the film, you can do like every possible thing. So I have like, it starts, let's say the film starts and everything is desaturated and it feels, there's not that much contrast. But then later I can up the contrast or make it more vivid or make it like you're pushing the color to its limits. So then if everything is desaturated, but one scene isn't, that's going to stand out.
Okay, yeah.
You know, use it for the special moments. But yeah, a lot of it, it's, I don't know, it's just instinct of what I think looks right.
Yeah. Colour is hard.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to kind of grasp it. And I thought there was some magic rule set or something, but really it just is experimentation. And you can look at things like colour palettes online, which are super useful. But again, it's all about, you know, figuring out, okay, this colour looks and feels right with this specific one as well. And moving those sliders around. It's hard. It is.
Yeah.
It's super hard. But you are acing it. You're getting it right. And speaking of desaturated color palettes, let's jump into your chosen topic if you want to introduce it.
Yes. So I chose the Triplets of Belleville as topic of discussion because really, I mean, it's one of the few films that I go back to. I wouldn't say annually, but like it feels like if I'm looking for, I don't know, inspiration, I'll go back to it. And also it's definitely the first film I saw that wasn't, you know, any of the animation I'd associate with my childhood. You know, by that, I think I was probably like 16 and I decided by that stage, I knew I wanted to do animation, but I didn't know what animation was like as I know it now. And that film, I just saw it and I'd never seen anything like it before. It's funny because it's, even though, it was the first one I saw, it's still so relevant, I think, to the work that I make, even though my taste has definitely changed over the years. It's still just, there's so many things in it that, you know, I'd apply to the things I make.
When you say, I forgot the word you said, or, God, damn it, I had it right there. This never happens. I can't remember the word. But it's when you say something like that is important to your kind of aesthetic, let's say, or a frame of reference for something for you to come back to. Is there any kind of specific points that stand out that you have in mind, or is it just the overall piece itself, or both?
I mean, it's
a broad question, sorry.
Yeah, I can go through them one by one.
Tell me what you've written down.
Okay. I mean, the first thing I think that's important to say about it is I don't think, you know, I knew what it was about the first time I saw it.
It's very hard to unpack.
It's bizarre. Like every time I see it, even, it's just crazy. I'm almost like, how did this get made, you know?
You know what's funny is, I don't know if it's funny, but it's funny to me. When I first watched it, I kind of was like, oh, because it's that kind of thing where you're just taken on this kind of ride, like a bicycle nearly.
Yeah.
And you're just slowly slugging up the hill, wondering what's going on here, but it's interesting. And then these narratives come in and, you know, they're resolved and more characters are brought in and you're just like, okay. And I remember after the first time I watched it, I'd looked up a kind of a synopsis of it. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, is that what happened? You know, because it's very, there's not a traditional narrative to it by any stretch of the imagination.
No, like it really, like it demands that you rewatch it, I think, which, you know, a lot of, I know, like it seems kind of against everything you're taught with story.
Yes.
But I do enjoy films where not everything is laid out perfectly, you know, with an explanation. Yeah. And the audience really has to think and they have to like commit themselves to it to get something out of it.
And the protagonist isn't standing up there singing "It's I Want" song or saying exactly what they want, because honestly, it's very hard. I was thinking to myself, I was like, it's not really a narrative that falls within the traditional idea of a hero's journey, but then I'm like, it totally is at the same time. And I was like, oh well, maybe the protagonist's desires aren't spelled out, but I'm like, but they are. Like, it's very clear what each person really wants.
Yeah.
But it's not shoved in your face all the time. But then I'm like, it kind of is at the same time. But it's like how those blocks are put on top of each other is so different than anything I'd experienced.
Yeah, because even I rewatched it. I don't think I ever watched it like so critically as I did in the past week. But there's a lot of things I noticed, which again, maybe just I haven't seen it in a year probably. But there's things when you're, you know, when you rewatch films and you're like, oh my God, everything's laid out, you know, for the payoff.
Yes.
But when you're watching it, you don't, you know, sometimes when you're watching films and you're like, that's the payoff, you know, it's more like subtle and subconscious, and it's really like drawn out. Like even like the first thing where Bruno the dog, which I don't even know if I picked up on it, but like as a puppy, his tail is run over by a toy train.
Yes.
And that's why he doesn't like trains. And it's like, it's not, you know, made a big deal of. I mean, but you realize after watching it again, like, it's just, there's nice repetition, I guess, throughout of like, each character has, I guess, like quirks. And like you said, they all want the same thing. And in every situation, they're doing the same thing. Yeah. You know, that is their character. Yeah. And like the other thing, well, the main thing I think you have to say is that there's no dialogue in the film.
Yeah. I'd almost forgotten to say that. Yeah. Which again is like, how do you sit down and write something so complex, I think, as this is laid out to be, yet it's so simple, and then not have dialogue to explain what's going on. Yeah. And that's where I think Chomet is really a kind of a genius in that sense, because he's such a good visual storyteller. Yeah. Which is necessary. You're not going to have dialogue. Of course. Yeah. But even like not having dialogue allows you more room, I think, to like do crazy things, because like you have to show it with the visuals. And I mean the whole world is so surreal anyway that it suits it when certain things are explained through images or like dreams or things that aren't actually there, but you know that, oh, this is just there, you know, that didn't actually happen, but that's how they're visually explaining it. Like there's a bit where I think they've arrived in Belleville and they find his hat. Yeah. I think his name, what's his name? Champion is the bike boy. The bike boy. And they find his hat, and the dog sniffs the hat.
And the camera like zooms in to the dog's nostril. And in the nostril, they show like the dog's thought process, visually on screen. So you see his owner, and then you see dinner in the dog bowl, and you like hear the bell ringing. And it's just so like, it's such a literal representation of thoughts, because like you don't have words or those things to explain thoughts. And obviously the dog can't talk anyway.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't know, it's almost like that's such an obvious thing, or you think, doesn't that seem a bit like an obvious thing to do or to just show? Yeah. But when you see those things, you're like, oh my God, why not show them?
Yeah, it makes total sense to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really where this film is so unique as well, is that kind of the use of the camera is so interesting, or the use of the angles, let's say, more than the camera, but where things are placed. Because very often, when the guys are cycling, it's right up there in their face, and it's kind of this like fisheye view, and this kind of bulbous, grotesque nose is kind of swaying in front of you, and you're totally there in the action with them. Like, that listless look in his eye as he's just kind of constantly cycling forward. But you're totally brought into that through the camera, and like weaved in to the kind of the specific spaces of that each character exists in.
Yeah, and like the shapes, the camera definitely plays to the shapes of the characters.
Yeah.
And like the way everything is framed. Like, I think the most amazing characters are the guys in the suits.
Oh my God, yes.
They're just these big squares.
Yeah.
And like the first time you see one of them, he literally just like slides in from the side of the screen, but like he perfectly fills it. He is this half of the square of your screen.
Yeah.
And it's just pushing everything and using it to make it just visually interesting. Like every frame was thought about.
It's very meticulous. I love those guys so much. And especially like you see one and I'm like, oh my God, but then you see the two together.
Yeah.
And move together.
And they just, when they pull out a cigarette and they're both mirroring each other. And also like mad crazy things happen. Like there's that shot where they walk towards each other and they just go face first into each other, and then they turn forwards.
They melt into each other.
Yeah.
But then later on with all the other mafias, you see they all have those kind of guardians, were they? Bodyguards. Guardians, my God. Yeah, and they all have it, and then you see the mob boss slots into that as well. Like they're almost, the kind of squareness makes them slot into each other. They all fit in place, which is totally different to, these kind of quirky other characters who don't seem to really belong anywhere. Like the kind of triplets who were, fishing for frogs all the time, or the clubfoot old lady, the grandmother. One of my favorite visual gags in the movie is like the progress of time at the montage at the start, where the house is there and Paris has been built around it.
Yeah.
And then you see the house on a slant because they had to tilt it over to get the train tracks past it.
Yes.
And I just thought that was so funny. Like that is so smart. It's really good visual storytelling.
Yeah, and like I love that like the crossfade of time passing, and it shows the house as years go by, and then just suddenly there's a bridge.
And the house is tilted over. I just thought this is so good. Do you remember if the old lady had her club foot at the start? I don't think she did in the early parts. I don't
know. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really pay attention because it stood out to me later when she had it.
He's got on the bike, or they've come home.
I think I saw it. You said you were what, 15?
Yeah, I think so.
I think I was maybe 20, I'd say maybe 22 when I first saw it.
Yeah.
I heard about it a lot, but then I just missed it.
Yeah, like it's such a standalone film, I think, even against his other work. I mean, I think it's closer to the old lady and the pigeons than it is to The Illusionist.
I think, as far as I know, from any interviews I've seen with him, Sylvain Chomet, originally when he made The Old Lady and the Pigeons, he was approached to make another short, and the plan was to make 3 short films as a feature, basically. They all kind of clicked together, and he was like, okay, well, I have these 2 other ideas, like the old lady and bicycles, and then the old lady and the frogs. And they were the 3 shorts that he was going to do.
Yeah.
But when he presented the old lady and the bicycles, they thought there could be a feature here, so they just started to merge everything together, because it's a very similar old lady in both of them, but he couldn't get the rights back for the old lady and the pigeon, like that design.
Yeah.
So he just redesigned it, which is cool. But I like that you talk about his short, The Old Lady and the Pigeons, because it is very stylistically similar.
Yeah, like you can tell this film came from that film.
Yeah.
You know, in a good way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'm totally fascinated by the choice of no dialogue. I remember seeing it again in another interview with him where he said that he found it really boring to record an actor and then you base the animation off that performance. So that's why he chose to kind of primarily focus on no dialogue, is so he could push out these caricatured shapes, you know, these caricatured people that litter the film. There's not a character in it that I can think of that isn't some kind of caricature, which is beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. And like, there's a lot of silent short films, I think, but not so many features. Because you know, I feel like it's the strength of animation is that show it, not say it, or
yes, 100%. It's a visual medium.
Yeah, a while ago, I got this comic that was a silent comic, which I find really interesting as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it is like, it was almost harder to read because you have to actually look at everything to get the meaning.
Yeah.
And it's French artist Nicolas Pressel. And I mean, it's so hard to find anything even about him online. I think I just came across the book in a bookshop in France.
Wow.
And
what's it called?
The one I have is called Fabrica.
Okay.
And a lot of his stuff, it's kind of based on history, but very surreal and warped.
Wow.
So like this one, it's Nazi Germany.
Okay.
But the Jewish population, or who you assume to be them, are actually musicians. So they're like arresting all the musicians and burning all their instruments.
Yeah.
And the way that you know who's a musician is that they all have 6 fingers on each hand.
Wow.
And it's basically this man hides a young boy with 6 fingers on each hand inside his machine at work in a factory where they're making bombs.
Wow.
And like, you know, such a complicated thing, but like it builds on the fact that you've seen, you know, Holocaust stories. You kind of like the way Mouse is such a great comic as well. But there's like a equally similar page in that as to like the dog sniffing the hat visual thing, where like the boy is in this machine alone at night, and he just shows like his head is replaced by a giant ear and then like a giant nose.
Wow.
So it's like he's alone and he can just, you know, hear and smell what's around him. So like how else are you going to show that except you know, give him a big ear for a head. And it's like, it makes so much sense. It's almost like when you see it, you're like, this is genius.
Yeah. And so simple to, again, that kind of thing where you talk about the dog's thoughts of like, why can't you show this? It's such a simple way of communicating effectively your thoughts and your meaning behind it. If you want to be super clear about something, why not do that? It doesn't have to be a heavy metaphor all the time. But that sounds so good, that comic. Or it is a comic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like a graphic
novel, I guess.
Graphic novel, yeah. I won't upset anyone here. Yeah, God, I love that. And it's the same thing with, you know, these kind of caricatured creatures, oh my God, people in this film. Because I was thinking about the kind of mouse mechanic.
Yeah.
And he's got those giant ears and does that kind of squeak. But it's such a, they bring that in as such a part of his character that when I think her name is Madame Souza,
Yeah.
she dons the disguise of giant ears to look like him. So it's referenced within the world, or those kind of metal ear muffs that he wears. What are they? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. They look like oven mitts or something.
Yeah, but metal.
Yeah.
Totally fascinating.
Yeah.
That push to, I think, celebrate what is traditionally unattractive. The kind of big noses and wonky eyes and the shape of these people and giant limbs but thin waists, and everything's gangly or robust and big, and even the cityscapes aren't particularly beautiful, but they're really like traditionally beautiful. I think one thing that stood out to me was like the little frogs. And the frogs that they're blowing up, or that he put in a frog with like one eye and two limbs missing, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. But then I realized why that was happening. But to lay that out and show it is so interesting, because I don't think there's anywhere I've seen in that world where I want to kind of sit down and snuggle in like I would with a Ghibli film. This is something I'm very happy to watch from a distance, but it grows on you.
Definitely. And like, I think what's really interesting throughout the whole thing as well is the balance between, things are crazy, things that are going on are crazy and exaggerated, and the characters and everything, but at the same time bits are limited. Like, something that I love as well is a lot of them are like really deadpan, where they just there's no expression going on, but that says so much. When she gets the pedal boat, and she's like she's rowing or whatever, pedaling out to sea. And the salesman guy is just standing on the shore, like looking at his watch, like dead serious, and it's like the humor is in that, the deadpan expression. And just the timing and the pacing, and like the first half of the film is really slow as well, but it's perfectly paced. You don't feel bored at any stage.
It's very captivating because you're trying to figure out what is going on, because it seems like you've just set up a movie where this guy wants to be a cyclist and compete in the Tour de France. You're just, okay, well, that's interesting. And then it goes totally off the rails, But I love that guy on the shore, and as well, someone like the waiter, that kind of, he's just waving around like a little whip or something. It doesn't really change his expression so much. It's totally that body language that he's kind of flopping around the place, almost, the way he's trying to appease these clients like he's spineless or something. It's so good to see that. How that's embraced as part of the caricature is so good, because you're right, the expressions don't change a lot. It's very rare. It's usually an eyebrow or something that shows emotion, like when they first meet the triplets, like in any other film you'd be like, well, that's a load of bollocks, how are they just there? But then you understand why they might have been there later on, and you just kind of go for the ride anyways, because it's so interesting to meet new characters and see what else exists in the world.
Yeah, because as well, for the whole, like, they're in the intro.
Yes.
As, younger people, and you think, oh, was that random? But like, it's everything is explained. And even watching it as well, like trying to look out for cool things. Every transition is beautiful. Like it goes from the dog, falls asleep, and then it goes into his dream in black and white, and then he wakes up and they're now at the Tour de France.
Yes, yeah.
Or there's a shot where the little mafia man, his face like morphs into a hamburger.
Yeah, on top of the building.
Yeah, the hamburger sign. And it's just nice, clever use of the things that make animation so special.
Yes, so specific, as well. something that could only exist in the medium, something like that, you know. Whereas I was going to say the montage of the sea crossing is really beautiful in its own way, but that feels very live action because it's cut to cut to cut. But you're totally right where, you know, something like going into the dog's dream and kind of morphing between these things feels like it could only exist in animation or have some kind of animated faculty to it.
Yeah, and you know, there's always talk about, you know, telling stories and, you know, only keeping what's necessary.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like a lot of the unnecessary things are the most interesting.
Yeah.
You know, and he almost uses those like mundane moments to do something interesting.
Yes. And then uses it again anyways.
Yeah.
Because everything seems to, like, it's very cyclical in that nature. No pun intended. But it's like, I was so confused as to why they didn't put anything in the fridge. But it was a kind of an interesting mundane moment, or why she wouldn't let her read the newspaper. It was just like, okay, they're just a bit crazy. But then you find out that's their instruments. And you're like, oh, wow, that's so totally interesting. Or, you know, when they're first eating the food and it's so, like, to me, the bones sticking out of it and everything, I was like, what is this? You know, when he comes in after a cycle, it just looks so non-appetizing. But then it makes sense you'd totally eat that over frogs, you know, like raw frogs in a bowl. And you're just like, okay, those kind of mundane moments are all kind of brought back in all the time. And those kind of simple comforts that, you know, all the characters have are challenged slowly throughout the film. The dog barking at the train and the window shut when he's in the house.
Yeah.
Or, you know, the fact that she likes to read the newspaper and Hoover, and then that's totally challenged when she's in this other house. So it is like there are barriers they come up against, but they just seem so...
Yeah, you don't question anything, I guess, because within the first, you know, 10 minutes, you're told that this is a bit of a crazy world. Like, you don't not believe it.
Yeah.
You're
totally
fully
right.
invested in their strange obsessions.
Yeah, and you're right. It's something I found fascinating with, let's say, Adrian Murgeot made a short film recently called Genius Loki.
Yes.
And part of the idea of that film was, like, he laid out the narrative in such a way that you can't guess what's going to happen, because it kind of defeats the purpose of that narrative if you're able to kind of like, oh, well, this is going to happen. And it ruins your enjoyment of the film if you're kind of taken out to go, oh, this is probably what's going to happen. And then you're like, at the end, guessed it, you know, that was okay. Whereas really as an audience, you want to get to the ending you expect, but be surprised of how you got there. And with this film, I couldn't guess the ending, really. I mean, I hoped it would be something good. But, you know, I was totally taken along for the journey.
Yeah, and it's just, like, so hilarious in such a, like, non-funny way. I don't know. You know, like, the comedy is just, you know, like how slow their escape is.
Oh my God, yeah.
On the thing, and like all the cars, one by
so
one.
Many cars, yeah. Just and anything small that happens to them completely throws them off. You know, it's that kind of, it's almost as if they're making fun of that whole genre of car chases.
Yeah.
Like anything small, the wheel loses mobility for a second and the car explodes. You know, and it plays into those guys just being fodder really at the end, which is so funny. How do you sit down and describe this to someone, to say, this is what this film is?
I don't. I mean, I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's not really explainable. You just have to watch it.
Yeah. Is that something that you try to do with your films?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're hoping for a certain amount of, you know, you're telling a story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do like not laying everything out. Or nobody knowing where you're going.
That rhymed. It was good.
Just, you know, things that are just really strange and visually interesting. Yeah, because you have the power to, the visuals, it's like a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So you may as well have fun with it and, push it. I mean, if the story is weird, I guess it suits as well if the characters are weird as well.
Let's say Wet and Soppy. When you sit down to think about that, do you start with a simple story or do you explore from the visual point of view first? Like, how do you approach that?
Usually, for me, it's always like the character is like the first thing. So I was drawing that guy, and I don't know, I was thinking like, is he like a weatherman or something? Like that was my first take. And then I don't know, it's kind of like
he kind of is a weatherman to some degree.
Yeah. It's kind of born out of, I don't know, like your reason for how you're going to make it into a film.
Yeah.
Like, I guess the limitations you have. And also, I think the things that you're interested in at that time. Because usually with anything I'm making, there's definitely an influence of other influences, that I've been thinking about, like with that painter. So with this, it just naturally, was like, I don't know, I had this character and then, the brief, let's say, for making that film was, right, it has to be short. Like, I think I was aiming for it to be 2 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
So I was like, right, well, I think to make a short film, it's going to have to be less abstract and more almost like a gag. That was kind of, I was thinking, what could I do if I gave myself that task of a gag? And then I had just the story of, this guy wants to dry his underwear, is trying to, keeps raining. And then, rule of thirds, the third time, it's not what he thought at all.
I don't want to spoil it for anyone,
Yeah. And at the same time, I got this book at the Dublin Art Book Fair.
Wow.
And it was about the Chicago Imagists, which were like a group of, I guess, painters, artists in the 60s. And all their stuff is really like grotesque, I guess. I mean, that doesn't describe Wet and Soppy, but like kind of very graphic, very 60s. And, I was thinking of Yellow Submarine, and I was thinking of...
Do you mean like kind of like large, unwieldy proportions mixed with different shapes, but very kind of rounded? Yeah,
very shapy and graphic, and like...
Yes.
I guess it was fine art, but really influenced by comics and graphic design, I guess. But still, painterly at the same time. Yeah, and I guess that just kind of merged in with the story, and I felt like that would fit really well, trying to... Because again, I was like, I want to set these limits.
Yeah.
Can I almost have... each shot feel like it's an illustration?
Yes. Yeah.
And like things move really from pose to pose. It's just very point to point.
I think that's a real strength that you have from what I've seen with your work is you're very good at subtle animation. It's a hard thing to do, to move things slowly and consistently rather than kind of quick poses, strong poses. You do have good strong poses, but it's like there's subtle movement mixed with it. With something like your little shorts that you've done, Pearly Whites, or what was that one, Rockstar? Is that another one?
Oh yeah.
Rockstars. There's very simple held animations there that are really beautiful, but again burst with life, and I think it's so good. It's just really, really, like, it's refreshing to see that attention to detail, care for movement, because I don't ever feel like your characters snap into a pose. They naturally kind of get into it, like almost gliding into it at whatever speed they do.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do, so I think that's a real strength that you have. And that's my compliment done now. It's going to be insults from now on.
Thank you. I think a lot of it as well is like, I'm trying to find ways to avoid animation. Because like the hardest, it's just hard.
Well, you've done it. You did good, yeah.
But also, yeah. No, but like there is, just because you know how to do it doesn't mean you should. Yeah. Especially like coming from training of traditional animation, like in Triplets of Belleville, I've never seen like more amazing animation. Yeah. They use it, but they use it like to the next level.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like you don't have to use that all the time everywhere. Like sometimes when you see things that are so beautiful, too beautiful, the whole way through, it's less impressive because you've set this very high standard. But it's like, what's the word? There's no like rest or there's no pattern or rhythm to this. You know where to go.
Yeah, it becomes very ubiquitous, very common.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think, there's places to use it and then there's places not to use it.
And I think you're right. Yeah, the Triplets of Belleville do it very well. Because again, when we talked about the kind of camera angles and those extreme ones, like sometimes you're totally captivated by, you think to yourself, the proportions are so well observed and carefully recreated frame by frame, but it still feels like this big kind of bug eye fish lens, especially those shots of Champion when he's kind of cycling and the camera's locked onto his head, that you forget about the kind of beautiful subtle animation that exists within the triplets themselves, brushing their hair back or, when they're laughing. And again, like I think for their time, the mix of mediums was really, really good. A film like that comes out in 2003, but has really well, I think, disguised CG elements. Now, they're CG, but they fit into the world That's a lot of work, but it really well paid off.
Yeah, because for it is such a three-dimensional film. Yeah. Even though it's really graphic and it's definitely it's complicated, but complicated in like a non-realistic way where they're pushing the perspectives and the characters and everything. Because like another film that unbelievable and equally complicated, but even more, is I Lost My Body.
Oh yeah.
And that's like realism.
Yeah.
They animated everything in 3D before drawing over it.
In Blender.
Yeah.
That film is just so good because again, you've got that kind of juxtaposition of the flashbacks of his story mixed with the, which are very well composed and the camera is very slow moving often, just with this kind of brutal reality the hand is going through and how they push the camera to work in that is just so good. And again, I like what you said, it's a very three-dimensional film. And I feel like with Triplets of Belleville, they weren't afraid to use all the perspective they needed to make a character move. There's no flat dimensional crossing. They'll sway to left and right. The lady with, the grandmother with her club foot. She can't but move in 3 dimensions all the time. Yeah. And that's a really interesting observation that they weren't afraid to put into a film.
And at the same time, I haven't really tried it myself, but if you go with realism, if you're off, it's unforgiving.
Yes, yeah.
Because if you're slightly off, it just sticks out. Mm-hmm. But because they're kind of like with triplets inventing their own perspective even.
Yes.
I'm sure there's layouts that are still complicated. I don't know if you've seen, what is it? The Last Bell. Have you seen the layout drawings of, is it Roy Nesbitt?
Roy Nesbitt.
Did the Nesbitt, yeah.
I have not seen the layouts, no.
Oh my God.
Definitely have to check these out, yeah.
He did obviously Who Framed Roger Rabbit intro.
Yeah.
And in that short, it's like a guy falls down the stairs into a subway station. And it is the most crazy sequence ever where there's like one continuous long panning background of tiles warping.
Wow.
And there's a photo of him working on that, and it's literally like snaking around his house.
Oh my God.
And it was shot on camera.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. No, I haven't. If I have seen it, I can't place it. But that sounds insane. It's like those kind of early, like the stuff for, Fantasia's Ave Maria sequence, where it's like this long track across, but it's so long. It took them like 3 days, working nearly the whole day to photograph the whole thing. It's just that long.
Yeah.
Across. Or maybe it's 6 days.
And they have some of those really nice, like the panning cobblestones as the guy is cycling. Yeah, going back to like as well what I said earlier with seeing your influence in like other people's work as well.
Yeah.
Some of the guys whose work I love is Eat the Danger.
Okay. Yeah.
And I can definitely see like some of the Triplets of Belleville influence in their stuff, just with like the panning tiles and things. And like the same with after getting that Chicago Images book, I was reading this interview of Sophie Coco Gate.
Okay, yeah.
I think she's an English animator. And she was like mentioned the Chicago Imagists, and I was like, it was almost like, that's why I like your stuff.
We like the same thing.
Yeah.
I see that influence in your work. And it's also, it's hard to do to get that good a read on yourself, that you're able to see what influences you in someone else as well, and how then that their work influences you back. It's like this kind of...
Yeah, like a triangle. Yeah.
Do you think you'd ever do anything to the scale of Triplets of Belleville?
Oh, I have no idea.
You don't have to answer that question. You already have. Sorry.
Maybe eventually. Yeah, like, I don't know. It's always like a back and forth with wanting to do something really ambitious or just wanting to do something achievable. Yeah, I'm sure like if I had the story to fit, yeah, it would be fun to go for it.
Yeah, especially something that ambitious.
Yeah.
Like the Triplets of Belleville.
Triplets, after I saw it, I just bought it on DVD.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of these, most animation, maybe not now, it's getting better.
Yeah.
But I'd have to order it online or the DVD to watch it. Like there was no chance it was going to be just on TV.
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah, it's not on any streaming service that I looked for there.
No, but even before Netflix.
Yeah.
If there is a before Netflix, yeah, I would just like, because you find one and then you're like researching.
Yeah. And
then you're like, right, I'm just going to like order the DVD. I don't know if it's going to be good, but I mean, it always is. It's worth watching anyway.
Yeah.
I came across like all the Folomage films, like A Cat in Paris.
Yeah.
Persepolis is great as well.
Wow. Beautiful. And that's the thing as well, like French animation is often disguised in like other cultures around the world. And it blends into Belgian animation and all that kind of stuff as well. But Kirikou and the sorceress, why couldn't I say that? Isn't that French? That's Michel Ocelot. Isn't he French?
Yes, I think so.
Cool. Just so I don't sound like an idiot. Yeah, he is French. Like his kind of stuff where it's the same as Persepolis, where you'd think that could be a Middle Eastern film, and it is to a degree, but it's effectively French animation. So they're so good at like diving into their histories and their culture.
Yeah.
Especially someone like, I know I've mentioned him before, but like Adrien Mergeau, where, you just feel the Frenchness from the film because it's so experimental. It's so artistically driven more than a narrative.
Yeah, and there's such a big comics scene in France as well. I feel like a lot of the animation comes from that comics influence. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of my favorite comics aren't even, well, they're not all French, but they're based on like true stories, I guess. Persepolis, My Friend Dahmer, that one is amazing. That's American. And have you heard, I don't know, there was a movie came out about that.
No, I've never even heard of it.
It's about the serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer in the 70s. But it's not even about the murder bit. It's like from the guy who wrote it actually went to school with him before he committed whatever he did. So, well, yeah, look it up, but it's not pretty. But it's just so interesting because it's like from this perspective of, he obviously wrote it years later after hearing about what happened.
Yeah.
But at the time, it's just like a collection of random stories of things he remembers of the guy.
Yeah.
And even, you know, him and his friends kind of took him under their wing, but in like they thought he was funny kind of way. Like they weren't actually friends with him. And it's just, like they never suspected anything. And even years later, I think he got like a phone call, the guy who wrote the comic, to say that like they'd found, you know, this serial killer, and his first guess of who it was from their like class in school wasn't even this guy.
Wow.
It was like someone, it was like, I don't know, I guess they thought it was just innocent. He's a bit strange, but just really interesting as well that it's not even about the reasons the guy's so famous. It's just the before.
Again, a totally different perspective.
Exactly, yeah.
And very, very unique, very introspective as well. I find like the French work that I've witnessed anyways, like really, really good at diving into what makes them tick and, you know, no holds barred, showing their experiences, but the metaphors are so rich that they show them through, you know, and sometimes something is like Persepolis, you know, where you're following this young girl as she witnesses the rise of the repressive state that she feels she's growing up in, but the kind of simplicity behind it mixed with the metaphor is so powerful.
Yeah.
But it feels fundamentally French in that way. Not to say that every French person is like that, but it's so, they're really, really, really good at just disguising the metaphor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Like not spelling things out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just like the Triplets of Belleville, where nothing is spelled out except for the word Bruno. I think of, but okay, I think we could probably leave it there if you want.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was nice.
I'm so happy. I'm really, really honoured that you kind of said yes.
I was shocked that you asked me.
Well, look, I'm really, really a huge fan of your work, Cliona, and I think you've got a really very, very, very bright future when it comes to this stuff, because you think differently to what I experienced, and kind of, I think you're probably going to be one of the next generation's leading voices when it comes to Irish animation anyways. Personally. Now, if you are or not, I don't know. You could just fall away to obscurity and, I don't know, eat cats or something. I don't know what you'll...
Eat tuna.
Eat tuna. Eat tuna. Do you like tuna even? Do you even like tuna?
I do.
Is that what inspired the film?
Yeah, I mean...
Je pas finir mes jours à Tombouctou, la peau tirée par des machines à clous. Moi je veux être